Well, good afternoon. As I mentioned in a previous video, Felicia was unable to travel with me on this trip due to some unforeseen circumstances. So where in the world am I? Well, right now I'm in Lachaise Cemetery here in France. It's free to get in. It's located in the eastern portion of the city, north of the Seine River by a little bit. And there's some very famous people that are buried here. You can look most of them up on Wikipedia, or their graves are marked on Google Maps. But if you don't have access to that, located throughout the cemetery are these map boards behind you that show you where a lot of the famous people are buried. I'm certainly not going to visit all of them, but I think I'm going to head off to the first one I'm interested in, which is Jim Morrison. I'll take a little video along the way, and then maybe I'll talk a little bit more about the history of this cemetery. Come along. I just wanted to take a minute here in between grave sites to talk a little bit first about Jim Morrison. If you don't know who he is or who he was the lead singer of The Doors. He was visiting here in Paris in 1971 and passed away from a drug overdose. So that's why he was buried here in Paris. If you're wondering why an American singer who's from California was buried here in Paris. And since Felicia's not here with me, I'm not going to go into a ton of the history of this place, but just to mention a few facts. The cemetery was first established in 1804, so obviously been here for a couple hundred years. It covers over 110 acres of the city, and it's actually the most visited necropolis in the world, which a place where, you know, people are buried or entombed. Over 3.5 million people come and visit this cemetery every year. So I'm going to head off to the next gravesite, and we'll see where that takes us. My next stop is here at the grave of Marcel Marceau. He passed away not that long ago in 2007. The last time I was here with Felicia was in the early 90s, so he obviously was not interred here at that time. If you're not sure who he was, he's a very famous French mime, probably the most famous French mime that all others aspired to be. Behind me across the way over there is the tomb of Oscar Wilde. There were a number of people that were visiting it, so I wanted to step a little ways away before I talked about it. If you're not familiar who Oscar Wilde is, he was a playwright and author from Ireland. Wrote some very famous works of art. The only one I believe that I've ever read is A Picture of Dorian Gray, probably one of my favorite classic literature pieces. I read it in high school. So if you're looking for some good classic literature, Oscar Wilde is always a good choice. I'm not really sure why he's buried here in Paris. Perhaps he lived here for a time. So that's more of a history thing. Felicia's not around, so I think I'll just move on to the next location. finally, for my last visit, is the grave of Marcel Proust, who, as you can see, passed away in the year 1922. He is a famous French novelist who wrote Remembrance of Things Past, amongst other things. And I think before I wrap up this video, I'm just going to walk around and admire some of the other beautiful grave sites of not necessarily anybody particularly famous, but the ones that I find striking. Well, I think that about wraps it up for my trip here to Lachaise Cemetery. I did want to recount one quick story from when Felicia and I were here about 30 years ago, and we went to the gravesite of Jim Morrison. Now, it was reasonably busy today, but it was much more so back then, you know, closer to when he had passed away. And they actually had the French police, the gendarmes that were stationed there, guarding it because people would want to get too close to it. There was a lot of candles that people lit and whatnot, and actually some of the flowers caught on fire while we were there, and the gendarmes had to like stomp out the fire from the candles that had set it on fire. Today, like I said, there are very many people, famous people that are buried here, but I just wanted to pay my respects to a few of them, a couple of authors, a musician, and an actor, people who just, you know, contributed to the world to make it a better place. So, you know, this probably wouldn't be my first visit or first stop on a visit here to Paris, but if you find some extra time, it's a nice quiet couple of hours. Just pay your respects as you're walking around, try to be quiet. You do have to walk off of some of the paths to get back to some of the graves, so just, you know, be respectful and be careful that you're not actually walking on somebody's grave or somebody's tomb. But otherwise, it's a nice couple hours spent, and as I mentioned earlier, I believe it is free to get in here. So if you want to see some more of our future videos, hopefully with Felicia included in them, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on that notification bell so you know when those videos come out. As always, thanks for watching.